Well, you don't do that. You know what I'm saying?
But I just did.
Well, but you know.
There we go. Yay, it's working.
All right. Let me.
Where is it?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Okay, this one is live now. Though
Did they call Askarov up? I'm gonna be fucking pissed.
I didn't see. I don't think they have.
Good.
Okay.
They don't even really say who is. They don't even really say who is starting for those guys until like the last minute. It's real annoying.
Okay, here's the link. If you're planning on posting it somewhere.
It's Pirate Day. Well, I can't log in. It's Pirate Day. I'm not dressing up like a fucking pirate on a random Sunday in November. Get out of here.
There you go.
What the hell? Can't you just have Pirate Day like November?
Why not?
What? What's the significance of it?
Pirates did their thing in November?
Did they? No.
They did their thing year round. I don't know what the significance is, man.
Yeah. They're really pushing it hard too. Frenzies, Pirate Party. They're sharing Halo clips. Whatever. Okay. Are you ready? Fucking their Twitter is a mess.
I mean, I'm as ready as I will ever get.
All right. So. Are we 214 or 215?
215. I don't know why the stream link is not updated.
Okay. You ready to rock and roll? Hit record, my friend. Hit record.
Oh, if we're streaming, we're recording.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah, YouTube. So basically, the way the process works is
you just trim the front. Yeah,
YouTube saves the stream. I download the finished stream, and then I strip out the video, and that's how we get our podcast.
All right, that's a magical.
Thanks, YouTube. Right. And it's all free, which is great.
Yeah, it's one of the 80 ways we've had to do it over the decade.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup. Yep. Ready?
This is perfect. This is why we only podcast once a month.
I ate cheese and like my mouth's all like gooey.
Hold on. Try again, whatever you like.
Yep. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 215. That's right, 215. You might be thinking, haven't you guys been podcasting for damn near a decade and you only have 250? Well, yeah, true. I'm going to cut myself off there. True. But our lives got busy, and so now it's a little bit more of a monthly podcast or when something major happens. But maybe we'll pick up. We'll find out. You've heard my voice. I'm Alex, as always. And as always, here with me is the Honorable Ben. What's up, Ben?
It's funny. You look at 215 podcasts and say, is that all? And I look at 215 podcasts and say, how the hell have we done 215 podcasts?
Right, but we were weekly for a while, for a few years there, right?
Mostly, yes.
Yes, and not here with us yet, but maybe surprising us via a paratrooping operation from Sweden will maybe be Colin. Ben, we've missed a lot since the season started. In fact, I don't even think we've really podcasted since maybe after the first week of the season. In that time, wow, so much has happened, and yet so much has not happened. What has happened was, as you all know, Celebrini immediately went out for an injury hiatus for quite a while, and Smith was consistently put in the lineup even though he wasn't getting any points there. Since then, Celebrini's back, and Smith has started to turn it on. Not only that, but both Sharks goalies have done what I would say is a fantastic job. I know there's some people, some of our fans who don't necessarily like Blackwood, and I understand the guy also makes like 48 saves a game. What do you want from the guy? But let's talk about what's changed for the Sharks between this season and last season, Ben, because now that we're about, a bit over a month, or actually just a bit under a month, no, over a month into the season, we're starting to see a little bit more. Obviously, when you've got a team where you have a lot of personnel changes, you have a lot of coaching changes, you have some behind the scene changes, it's going to take a while for you to get your identity set, for you to find your footing. Here's what I've noticed, Ben. The difference between this year's Sharks and last year's Sharks primarily is the compete. The Sharks this year are not yet putting together 3 full periods. However, they are not giving up at all. And my question to you is, well, one, have you noticed that same thing? And two, do you think that is coming from the leadership? Do you think that is coming from some of our new players or the youth? Because one of the things that I noticed very early on about guys like Celebrini and Smith is they have a very high level of compete. These guys, they do not want to lose. And I'm not saying any player really wants to lose, but those guys are guys that are like, oh, you think you're going to beat us and we're down by 20? Well, guess what? I'm going to try till I kill myself. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think if we're going to define this is a much more competitive team by they haven't lost consecutive games 8-1. They haven't really given up in games, so it gets to 8-1. Like, we've seen a lot of this team go down early and then come back to, come close to tying the game or tying the game.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it feels like maybe there's a little bit more compete. I don't know. I'd also say outside the defensive core, there's a little more talent. So, that helps, right?
Yeah. The offensive talent is, it is better. Toffoli coming in is great. Granlund continues to be awesome. Like, he's one I know that they're probably going to flip at the deadline, but I would not mind them actually holding on to him as veteran leadership because he is, even at his age, is so good on the puck and so good at working with guys like Celebrini. There was a game a couple of days ago where Celebrini and Granlund was on the power play towards the end, and the two of those guys together was just it was bliss for me. And I agree. Now the Sharks do still have, to be clear, a talent deficit for right now. Like, you still have, I would say what I've seen, Ben, is the potential for 2 rock solid lines and then a third, and then a fourth that just happens to be there. Maybe not as defensively liable as last season. Outside the defense, we're just talking about forwards, obviously.
Yeah, what I would say is last night I think we finally saw what the forward core could be, in the sense that they finally moved away from Will Smith third line center, which was a stupid thing to do, and put him on Celebrini's wing, which I think we all were hoping would happen from the beginning of the season, because those two guys are meant to play together for 15 years, right? Like, so do it. Start it now. Now it's not ideal because they then bolted those two guys to Barclay Goodrow, who couldn't connect with the passes he was being sent by either of those guys, couldn't hold on to the puck in the offensive zone. So there's still work to be done on that one. And then the second line is great. Like, give us the Lund line all day, whatever.
Yeah.
The team could still be better in the forward core if they gave some of the younger guys positions they're currently wasting on Klim Kostin, Luke Cunnin, whatever. But it's better.
Yeah.
And the defense is a little better, but they still haven't given us the idealized version of, even with the current roster, what the defense should be, which is Wallman, Thompson, Thrun, and give up on one of Ruda, Ferraro, CC, basically. Right?
I mean, I would say arguably you could, give up on all 3 of those guys. And when Mukhamadullin is ready and Cagnoni right now in the AHL for the Barracuda, he's killing it. And he was killing it in the preseason. I mean, he looks great. And then, just think, Ben, like, I think Dickinson has already had 2 hat tricks down at his level. So, like, this is sort of what I was alluding to in the beginning of the season when I was saying that, I don't expect the Sharks to be good, But I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think they have to be that bad because they do have the pieces to pull up to be
Yeah.
pretty okay. The question is, and I think they've been very clear about it, when are they going to actually start making those moves? And I know there's been a lot of complaints about this, like online, in our Discord, about like, why do you keep marching out Ruda and CC and Ferraro? And the reality is, they told you they're going to do that. They're not going to be waiving those guys to go to the AHL this season. I think your best hope is that those guys play enough of an okay game that
Yeah,
they're
that you
worth
can.
something to be moved so they can make
Yeah.
room. So, if you're expecting guys like, again, the only player that I really see maybe getting injected quickly, and it'll come at the expense of one of the other guys that you mentioned, Van, is
I know.
maybe Mukmadulin, when he's ready. Cagnoni will probably make some guest appearances up and down. But
See, but
yeah,
the thing about that is that there's no reason at all to worry about Ruda. Just fucking put him on the bench or waive him. Like you got that guy as a throw in on a trade. You didn't trade for him, right?
I don't think they're worried about it. I don't think that they believe that they want to have
No,
that many young kids under there.
You're probably right. They're
Yeah.
wrong, but you're probably right.
Yeah.
The thing is that Ruda. I mean, okay, look here's the other possibility. CC and Ruda are in on the tank.
Yeah.
And when you look at how poorly CC played goal 1 yesterday,
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck are you doing chasing a much faster guy around the net when he's got a lead on you? Like, what the? Yeah.
That wasn't a chase.
No.
Howdy.
We have a wild Colin that just paratrooped in, like I was saying before. Colin, we were just talking about how, after about a month into the season and being able to sort of see the direction the Sharks are headed, things starting to slowly pop into place more than they would have, in the first couple of weeks. We're talking about how the Sharks, they seem to have more compete this year than last year. Ben noted that they do have some slightly better players in a lot of areas. I would also throw in here too, because this is another thing that I know you guys see is getting called out on and off. I think only in our Discord, I haven't seen it online anywhere, are the goaltenders. I think both those goaltenders have been phenomenal so far. Don't get me wrong. Yep. Occasionally Blackwood will let in a softie. He's also getting peppered. So it gets pretty fatiguing.
Both goalies are, right?
Yeah.
Like, but if there's one thing that is consistent from last year to this year, at least until very recently, it's that the Sharks are getting outshot by heavy margins, right? Like
crazy.
15 more opponent shots. And again, like that comes from the third and fourth lines are not very good. And the defense, when it's Ruda, Ferraro, and CC, some combination of those guys paired with each other, they can't get out of the defensive zone and they can't maintain possession in the offensive zone.
Well, and also a huge part of that too is that, there's two things that I've noticed about those guys. And I noticed it heavier in the beginning of the season than I do like as of today, November. One was regularly out of position and clearly not communicating. And two, and this was a wider defensive problem too. Like I thrunded it a bit more than I was expecting, and so did others. Was for a while there when the Sharks were in the defensive zone, like they were not skating, they were not moving their legs, and you can't do that now. If you watch them today, on average, everyone's moving their legs and going around. They may not all be in position necessarily, or they may not be able to maintain possession, which is a big, they fumble the puck a lot there. But at least they're moving their legs.
So Colin, what do you think of our supposition?
Well, I think this team is completely absent on defense. Like it's almost like I'm watching two different games. I'm watching the fun, exciting, cool game when it's on the offensive side of the ice, and then I'm watching the other team demonstrate their offensive strategies when it's on the defensive side of the ice, and as you say, getting some really good goaltending. But I was curious how, with all the hate that we throw at CC especially, but we want these people to get traded. So sell me on CC. Like why would I want this person on my team if I'm
because you're dumb. Honestly, like I think one of the smartest pickups that the Sharks have done so far this season is grabbing Liljegren up there, right? And he's young and he's great. I like him so far.
Yeah.
Cece's a smoke and mirrors guy. He's a guy who at one point had value, and now people stick to that memory of him. And I think, same with Ferraro. There seems to be a perception, definitely in the organization, but this is how the NHL works, right? Like general managers will often look toward what you've done instead of what you're potentially going to do. And I think Cece is there. I don't think Cece is going to net very much at all. It'll probably be junk picks, unless something suddenly picks up. Ferraro, I don't think they're going to move him. I think they should move him. And I think he could actually fetch something, but the longer they wait to do that, and they continue to wait to do that, the more teams are going to be like, I think his only skill is standing in front of the puck and blocking it, mainly because he's, doesn't have any other defensive capability. Ruda, I think you do the Wallman thing where you do it for future considerations. But that's the thing, is that neither of those have, I would say, if you're looking at their game today, I don't think those guys have very much value. If you're looking at their game yesterday, which a lot of GMs will, then, Greer can move them if he wants to move them. I don't think he's going to until the trade deadline.
Right.
So, that's just to set an expectation. The Sharks this season, you have to remember, even when they get exciting for a couple of seconds there, like the Sharks' goal this season is incremental improvement and development. So, while we can see guys like Cagnoni right there, other guys that are right there, even Askarov, who's right there, they're not in a rush to pop those guys in because they're not in a rush to move players out. You're going to see that happen at the deadline. I would expect quite a few moves to open up spaces, hopefully, and not backfill them in a way that clogs it, or maybe the offseason. But that's just what the season is. It's kind of a, I don't want to call it a purgatory season because they are trying to move forward, but it's an intermediate season.
Here's what I don't get, though. So their defensive evaluation is schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Right? So they've done a great job of picking up guys like Jack Thompson, who turns out is quite good.
Yeah, he's great.
Liljegren, who I love. And I liked him when he was in the top 4 for the Maple Leafs last year. That organization clearly went brute mode and decided, Liljegren isn't physical enough for them. So, great pickup. Getting Mockmadulin seems good. Cagnoni, drafting him and getting him to the place he is suggests that there are people in the organization who understand what has actual value in the defensive zone, at least theoretically. But then you have them continuing to roll out. Oh, and getting Wallman for free, also amazing, right? But then they've continued to roll out Ruda, Ferraro, and they went out and got Cece. I don't get that. What is happening? What is happening in your development and acquisition side that the same group that goes out and gets a Liljegren also gets a Cece? It doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
I would suggest that Liljegren is a good example of timing. Not to say that he couldn't have been had earlier. The thing you have to remember about a lot of trades is they're not typically off the cuff. Some of these take a while. So it's possible they were talking to the Maple Leafs earlier. It just took a while to come around. It's also, the deal with the Maple Leafs is, look, that franchise has a shitload of pressure on them from their fans to win and win now, and especially with the players that they have. And it's been like that for a couple of seasons. So they're going to start making, we've been there, right? And with a less intense fan base. That's why we had all those long contract extensions trying to extend the window, because we were, seemingly at the cusp and thought we were, closer maybe than we actually were to get over the edge. So when a team's in that position, it's going to start making some, it's going to have to shed players that it probably shouldn't be or doesn't want to be. And the Sharks are in a great position with their cap situation. And honestly, with their talent, the only thing that got me was, Benning, fine. I would not have swapped those two at all. I would have just kept Liljegren. But, I think that's why that happened. So I think when you look at like CC and Ruda, last season was really brought in to be veteran defensive leadership. And then they just kind of stuck with him because they signed him to like a 2 or 3 year deal, right? And then CC, I think they were trying that again because I think they knew that Vlasic was going to be out for a long period of time and figured, well, Ruda isn't quite cutting it, but we're not trying to win a ton this season anyway. Maybe CC will do it. And CC was another somewhat opportunistic grab. So I think there's a difference between the, oh crap, a young guy with skill just opened up or fell on our radar. Let's jump on that guy. Because they're definitely doing that to an extent. Like you can tell the last 2 years, one, if it's a reclamation and they're young, the Sharks have jumped on almost every one of those. And then here too, with both Jack Thompson and Liljegren, not necessarily reclamation, but like guys who are like borderline cusp of their main rosters, but not quite there because the pipeline's clogged. Askarov too, and they're young. And the Sharks are like, how old? We're on it. Yeah, whatever. We'll just do it. And then we'll collect all of those players, and then we'll see which ones end up standing out. And I think that's the level of competition that Greer wants to cultivate, right? Like,
yes,
he I don't agree with necessarily clogging every lane, but he's basically like, look, are you 25 and under, and like you could be good, but you're just not right now? We'll grab you. We'll put you, in our system, and then you can duke it out with the rest of the kids, and hopefully the cream rises to the top.
Look, I think everything you just said is totally fair in the sense of, you don't know what your defensive core looks like over the summer because of injuries and so on and so forth. But you know what Cody Ceci is.
Yes.
Like everybody knows that he's garbage except apparently you. And you moved Ty Emberson, who actually looked pretty good last year, for garbage. I just don't
again, I think it's what I think it is. I think it's a misread on where leadership comes from.
Sure,
and I think,
yes.
and I think a player like Celebrini is kind of the exclamation point on that, because
Yes.
Celebrini is young. I would have no issue making him the captain tomorrow, because you can see he just inherently has that leadership
drives
skill.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think Smith's issue in the beginning of at the start of the season, to me, was not a skill issue. It was a confidence, a trust issue, because the game's faster, it's bigger. You could see he was hesitating, but I think Smith also has that. I think teams, and the Sharks have done this a lot, just instinctively reach for older guys who have been in winning situations, and I think that's why CC's there.
Yeah, you're right. It is absolutely he sucks, but he has leadership skills. So let's bring him in. Or probably it's not. They're probably not saying he sucks. They're probably saying like he's still good, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, again, that's why they brought in Goodrow. Did you need to bring in Goodrow for that? No, not at all.
Oh man.
And listen. I enjoy Goodrow if only because he has a habit of being in the right place at the right time for big, important goals. He's not going to score a shitload, but he just, when that tying thing's on the line, he just coincidentally happens to teleport there.
Glue him to the fourth line
as well. But
glue him to the fourth line.
Yes.
Glue him to the PK.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about this for a second, because here's why I think he was on the first line last night. I think it's pretty straightforward.
It's a responsibility.
Well, yeah, a bit, but also the Sharks have talked about this. I know you don't watch the pre and the post and all the interviews, but they've talked about this a lot, and that is this idea that your roster composition is always your top players, and it just kind of goes down the line. The Sharks right now are a team that is extremely top heavy in that sense, right? And so, like my complaint, when Celebrini wasn't playing because he was injured, was that he was going to pop in and they were going to completely stack those first two lines, and the other two lines would be a black hole. And like, you don't have to do that, right? So when you have a player as good at running play as Celebrini, you throw Smith up on the wing, and you know those guys want to impress each other and want to impress everybody. And then, so in my mind, what they did was, which I was sort of advocating for earlier, although not in the first line, was, look, have two. You don't have enough good guys for 4 good lines, but you don't have to make it so that the two are so far and away better than the other two that you're unbalanced, right? And I think the reason that they threw Goodrow up there, the only reason, aside from, I guess defensive responsibility, which is probably part of it, given Smith and Celebrini right now, not that I don't think they're defensively responsible, but they're going to take higher risk stuff. Again, is that idea of like, well, Goodrow had just come off scoring in a clutch situation. So look, he's not going to be great. We can make that second line a little bit better. We can make that first line a little bit better. And that third line, we'll make that a little bit more of a defensive forward line. And the fourth line's kind of there. So I think they're trying to spread it out. Again, I wouldn't necessarily do it that way. I think there are other options that would have been better. But, we were talking about this when Smith was locked in center, right? And it was like, okay, so you have Smith on the third line. Part of the reason they have him on the third line is to be able to give him, reduced minutes and spurts, and kind of, they've been taking his development very seriously in terms of on a game, off a game, or, however what their actual plan looks like. But also, in theory, you would have, 3 decent centers down that line. If you can figure out what those wings are on the third line that are going to be compatible with Smith, then all of a sudden you have, one really good line, one half good line, another half good line, and then, a pylon line.
There, but for the grace of God, go we.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I think you have to look at the Sharks' talent, right? Like with the guys they have up. Now, you could argue all day, obviously, again, well, what about guys, Cardwell popped up and looked great.
He did.
Gushin, it didn't hit as hard as I was hoping he would, but still looked fine. And I would like him to get more minutes up there. But again, like they're not trying to bring up the youth to really sit them. And I do think that might have a little bit to do with why the defense is the way it is too, because like right now they would much rather have guys who are younger and developing getting minutes than sitting in the press box for, whatever reason, be it waiver blocking or whatever.
Right. I guess my point would be that's a decision that you don't have to make, right?
Correct.
Like,
I agree.
I totally agree with you that seems to be what they're doing. I just don't agree with it. I don't think any of us do, right?
I don't here's where I am with it. Honestly, it's kind of funky because I'm with you for the most part. Like, I would love to see, just throw in the kids. At the same time, I was one of the people who was saying, this isn't working right now with Smith. I know he's going to be good, but he's gone 8-9 games with 0 points, like not a lot of shots. So there, to some extent, there is an adjustment that needs to be made. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, right, and then he eventually got there because they let him keep playing. True. Although, it would be interesting to see it would be interesting to see what would happen, though. And I think this is what they're concerned about. If you had a team full of that, does the confidence just get so completely battered that they don't develop, right?
But the thing is that you're putting him in a position where his confidence can't develop. Like we talked about, I think this was even a topic back in our first podcast of the year, is if you're going to put him on the third line with boat anchors on the wings, he's not going to get points anyway, because you can't maintain possession. You can't rely on either of those dudes to convert a good pass. Like let's look at what Smith did last night when he was on the power play with Toffoli, right? Like Toffoli was exactly where he needed to be and he put together a great shot, and Smith just like rather than shooting the puck in that situation, saw he was open, had confidence that Toffoli would do something with that puck and passed it, right? Like, the problem is that Cunnin and Goodrow, they can occasionally be effective, but they're effective in garbage.
But again, though, I'm not disagreeing with you, Ben, here at all.
Yeah.
But that's assuming you have Toffoli, right? And so I think what my point is, and it's not even a full point, it's just a consideration, is that if you get 3 guys who are where Smith was in the first 7 games, and you pop them on the line because they should be good or fun or they have skill, but they haven't played at this level yet, are you going to have them be in that Toffoli situation, or are all 3 of them going to be a little bit shell-shocked and gun-shy?
Right.
And I think that's what they're trying to say with not bringing some of these guys up and just doing that automatically is, look, these guys do need to be eased in a bit. Otherwise, we could end up with that. And so even though you have, like, let's say a Gushin, who I think all 3 of us believe in, and a Cardwell or a Bordalo that all 3 of us believe in. I would argue Bordalo, I don't know what the NHL is like by now.
Colin Graff. Colin Graff should be up. I mean, he's above a point per game at the AHL level, right? Like,
yeah.
The other thing that I feel it's really fitting that McDavid is about to. Did he hit his 1,000 yet? I haven't double checked. He's doing it against Toronto, I guess, tonight. But like, we're in this era where we have these kids coming into the league and going insane, and I think it makes us forget that people, like a lot of people stepping into the league, have to struggle. Joe Thornton had 7 points in his first NHL season. Like, in his first full season, 55 games, 7 points. Like, bust. Oh boy, get rid of him. Send him to the Sharks.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing, though, right? Like a guy like Joe Thornton, and I think I'll put Celebrini or McDavid and Bedard in that category. Those guys are guys who are very headstrong and are going to tough through that well. I don't find those guys to be particularly. I wouldn't say they're not emotional, because you can see that, like, Celebrini hates, like, even in his post-game interviews, really, like, you scored 2 goals. How do you feel? And he's like, well, we lost. Like, you know what I mean? But not every player is exactly there. And so there may be a balance that you need to strike. Like, I don't think it's unfair to say, hey, we don't want to do this because this. But what I would suggest, though, is that's where you could really leverage your 4th line. Take a line where you have reduced minutes, pop those guys in there, and if they're getting shellacked, you can kind of bring down the minutes for the rest of the game, calm things down a little bit, or mix up that line. I don't think they want to do that beyond having, a single line. And obviously the NHL is still stuck in this, like, 4th line has to either be face punchers or gritty or defensively responsible. But I think that's how you could bring those guys up a little bit more gradually.
Yeah, I guess going back to Smith, like, if the goal was to build his confidence, they did the opposite by putting him on the 3rd line with those 2 guys, right?
Yes, I agree.
What if you want to build Smith's confidence? And yeah, I mean, I think what we saw was Smith did persevere. He worked hard. He started to get occasional games where he really popped out. But if you want him to build confidence, fucking glue him to Celebrini for the whole season.
Yeah,
and
it's so easy.
I don't know why they were so slow to put him in the wing.
They wanted him to center.
I know, but like, you
stubbornly,
he can become a center at another point in time,
like Hurdle.
Yep.
Right, like when Hurdle came into the league, it was very clear that there's no reason to make him, play hard mode like they did with Smith. They could have done the same thing with Smith, and now I'm glad that maybe they are now. I guess that's what I would say. Colin, you have a thought.
Look how close Smith came with the Stonehand wingers, where like, as you say, he soldiered on, but there were a bunch of times where he got close to his first assist and it was just failure, and then you put him into better opportunities. He eventually gets it himself, and I think watching Smith like learn this season has been great, but he looks so smooth, and he looks so much more confident now. He's got points, and then him and Celebrini together, just electric. Like, oh my god, this is what I need right now.
Yeah, there was a pass. There was a pass that Smith made to Celebrini early in that game where I was just, holy shit. how do you see that, first of all? And if you're Celebrini, how do you know to go where you went? And it's just like, well, that's why they're who they are. That's why
Well,
they were a number 1 pick and a number 4 pick, right?
Well, let's be real. Celebrini
so good.
doesn't look toward at the puck or in any particular direction when he plays. He just happens to that was one of the most fun things to watch at the beginning of the season was he'd make this no-look pass, and it's like, hey, Celebrini, you do have to look a little, not because you can't make it, but because no one else is aware that you're passing the puck. And it was very Jumbo-esque in that, early Jumbo-esque.
That goal he scored when he entered the zone on his own and fired it from between the circles. He wasn't looking. He just shot that puck.
He just knew.
It was a snapshot from the blue line. It was nuts. He's going to have a hot dog or something thrown onto the ice because he's going to be looking up into the stands, ordering a hot dog as he scores. And the vendors just won't know.
Pointing at an usher, just be like, popcorn, please.
Yeah, it's just going to come flying onto the ice. Best goal celebration ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this season as it goes because they're doing what I was hoping they would do, which is they're not necessarily winning, but I can see improvement. I can see portions of the team settling in. I can see development occurring. And also I'm entertained. I mean, quite frankly, they've been coming back. Yeah, they've been coming back. Last night they lost to the Penguins, but they came back. They keep coming back. And while you would hope they wouldn't be down, again, they're not necessarily a complete or even a great roster. So, the fact that the goaltenders are able to keep them in it, that to me is huge. That also, just to point out, really excites me because I think both those guys are UFAs at the end of the season, correct? So, you have Askarov right there. So it's very clear that part of the development deal with Askarov was, hey, this season, sit tight till maybe the trade deadline or an injury, and then next season you're likely to kind of come up, assuming that you continue to play really well in the AHL, which he is. So
he's had one bad game. Unfortunately, it was last night.
Yeah. So basically, which means he's probably not going to be there today when I go to the Barracuda game. Womp womp. But that's the thing is that those two guys, there have already been talks that the Avalanche have inquired about Blackwood, and I am halfway through sewing his name on the back of an Avs jersey. And every time he makes, has a game like he has last night, I'm like, all right, let's go ahead and up the pick value coming back for that guy, So all the things that I was kind of hoping would occur right now, and we're only in November, are already starting to take shape, which I think is really encouraging. Are you guys as encouraged as I am?
Well, I'm sure RGM is reminding the perspective other dumb Avalanche. I don't know about dumb GM on that part, but Greer is reminding people that goalies traded from the Sharks have a habit of getting cups. So
I think both of these guys, I think both of these guys are perfect for a tandem. And I think either one of them is, on the cusp of being a starter, if not already. I mean, I think a lot of people look at it as just two backup goalies running a tandem. I think both these guys are better than that. And they're not facing easy chances. It's not just the shot total. It's where some of the shots are coming from and how bad the defense at times can be in front of them. But again, if you're a Sharks fan, you're looking at it from the perspective of, hey, just don't get hurt long-term. We're going to flip one of you anyway. And awesome. That's going to benefit the team. So I see, compared to the last couple of seasons, I ignore the standing. I see a lot of things that are encouraging, and I see the forward progress that we've been waiting for. I think the future is very bright. I'm going to the Barracuda game today with my family. Very excited about it. I've been watching and following them as well. They have a lot of players who are developing really well and who are on the cusp of, or could just be ready right now if we snapped our fingers and got guys like Ceci out of the way. I think Sharks fans the future is pretty bright despite stuff. And Colin, one of the most fun things for me this season is I know on and off I have you sweating a little bit. I know on and off I have you sweating a little bit because at least up until now we're starting to get some separation. The bottom of the league was so close in points. That the Sharks if the Sharks had put two of those games away in a row, they would have been out of the top 10 for traffic at that moment in time. So that's kind of fun to watch as well.
No, don't worry. Like there's some confusingly bad playing teams right now that will wake up and start pulling points and push us back down. Don't worry. We're top 5. Man, you get like a big body prospect like Martone or Martone on this team. Oh my god. Like top 5 draft, and I think this team's ready to start being really entertaining.
I still think they're going to slip out of the top 5.
Shut up.
But you know what? Like they're going to get. Hopefully they'll get a good draft pick either way out of it. Any other observations that you guys have made in this first month of the season? You guys want to call out?
Eklund is so fucking good.
Eklund is so fucking good, and he's 22, and he's still growing. He is. I don't think his praise gets sung enough with how perfect he is and just exactly what we need.
I think Sharks fans forget that he's young because he's been with the franchise for so long, and we saw him kind of go down for a bit. That like I'm constantly going like, man, yeah, he's good, and then I think he's like 3 years older than he is, and then his age pops up, and I go, huh?
And he's getting good everywhere. Like that's my favorite part. Is it seems like he's never really out of his element at any phase of the defensive play or transition or like offensive cycling or forecheck, and he just so cool to watch him really just be our top line forward. And Smith, like I said, watching him learn lessons is awesome. The goal that went off of him, you could just see he overextended his stick and he got pulled off balance. And it's like, nope, you can't do that at this level. And I feel like he's getting like lucky bounces. Like he's getting a lot of you reach, I teach that doesn't end in a concussion. And I think that's fantastic.
His snapshot is wicked. Like it is fast. He's got a fast release, and it is like pinpoint where he can get it off well. I'm not worried about. I know in our Discord it seemed like I was just kind of ragging on him, and I really wasn't. Like I'm not worried about him long term at all, and I hope that they continue to play him. I think playing him with Celebrini is fun because those two are going to push each other. But even if they don't, pop him over with Granlund. Like honestly, Granlund can hold the fort so well that like you give him those opportunities, build that confidence. He's going to be good in the long run. Those guys seem to be having a good time, which is great, and their development seems to be going pretty well. I don't even think that Celebrini really needs much in the way of development, to be perfectly honest. I think he's just there. He maybe makes a couple of like defensive things, but he's just because he's just eager. He'll settle down a bit in that.
I would not be able to pick out a clear weakness in Celebrini's game. Besides, he's learning it with every shift, and he's evolving with every shift, like an 18-year-old should. Right. and I honestly I think I would say Smith is a little less I think positioning wise where he needs to be, but he's also getting better every game. I think
Confident Smith is so like night and day from like insecure, slow, like not trying to like predict. And so let's see how he does if he hits like a 2-month dry spell. Like, does he still keep the pace and fight through it and really show himself to be that person where it's just a one-time league problem? Or
I don't think he's going to. I really don't.
I'd also say if he does, you fucked up.
Yeah,
because he would not have a 2-month dry spell on the wing of Celebrini.
I mean, I would just say in general, I think the first 10 games, he was just a little overwhelmed with the speed and the physicality. By now, as he starts to settle in, I wouldn't expect him to he's got the same compete level that Celebrini has. He may not necessarily have the exact same skill level. He may not have quite the
Right.
same vision or IQ, although he still has very high vision and IQ. But at this point, I think, he just needed to get his legs underneath him. And then I think he's going to continue to pick up. Maybe it is in spurts, but I wouldn't anticipate him falling back. Again, Ben, to your point, unless they just put him in a situation where he can't do anything. But even then, I think, whenever you're in a situation where, it's new and it's intimidating, once you get your footing, even if you get bounced around, you still now have your footing. Like, you have a better idea. Like, I think he started to figure out those first games. You could just see he was slow to react. He was doubting his decision making.
Mhm.
Once you get that confidence in there and you go, no, this is the correct decision, I think it's pretty hard for you to lose it long term again, unless you really get run ragged.
Look at it from, let's try to put ourselves in Smith's shoes, right? Like, you're a great player at the college level, and you're 19 years old now in the NHL. Now every player is bigger than you, pretty much. Every player is just as fast as you. Every player has some amount of skill, unless they're on your own third or fourth lines, and that's and you're trying to process the game the way Smith does. Smith is a guy who gets by on his vision and his ability to sort of predict where people are going to be.
Right.
And you can do that at college level when everyone is the same size and you're far fewer great players on the teams you're playing. It's just different, and you should have to adapt. If you're Celebrini and you don't have to adapt, that is why you're a mutant. That's why you were pick, right?
Well, keep in mind too. I mean, this was the other thing, and this was in question in terms of Smith's stock come draft time. Was Smith played for BU, right? Great team. He had amazing line mates, and one of the things that was affecting his stock was how much of what he's doing at that level is pure him. How much of it is his wings, and the team around him. When you come over here to the Sharks and you're coming over to a last place finishing team, you don't have that same level of skill. And again, I think to your point, Ben, had they popped him in the first line to start, we probably would have seen him pick things up a little bit quicker, although he would have been facing harder competition as well, to be fair.
But I think that's good.
I do too. I do too. But again, it's if you throw him up against McDavid right away, he'll still probably struggle against McDavid, right?
For sure.
Of course.
But I also think when you're in those situations and that's your future, right? Your future is to be a first or second line scoring guy. How do you learn that on the third line?
I know.
Right?
That's so the third line thing again. I to your earlier point, Ben, I think was strictly because they already had two really strong centers, in the first two lines, right? So obviously it's going to push him down. But it is kind of interesting to see them immediately throw Celebrini on the first line and lock him in there.
By the way, I just want to point out, so Cutter Gauthier, one of those great players that was on his wing at Boston College, is in the exact same position Will Smith is right now.
Yeah.
16 games, 6 points. Will Smith is 18. No, sorry, that's not Smith. Hold on. Had him.
Are you looking at Giovanni?
15 points. No, 15 games, 4 points, right?
Yeah, right.
They both, I think, benefited from each other at the college level. And that's not a bad thing. They just need to grow. Right. That's you should have to grow into an NHL spot.
Well, and this is a reminder that I want people to take away from this podcast, this episode of this podcast specifically, is that some of these things can take a bit of time. And when you're talking about development, I think you'll see this online. You saw it a lot in the beginning of the season, and I think it's just because people lost sight of the fact that the team still isn't great, and they are still focused on development and not necessarily winning. They're focused on being more competitive. That does not necessarily mean that they're trying to win every game, which is why they were pulling Smith out, every couple of games for extra practice and development. If their goal was to win, you would never be doing stuff like that. But they're focused on development. And the players that are playing on the team right now, they're in one of two or three camps. One is they are developing. Second is they are just trying to hold things together well enough for those players to develop. And or the third is they are helping to drive that, right? So you get so again, if you look at the goaltenders, guys like Blackwood and Vanacek, their job is to take 40 shots because they're going to get shot on 40 fucking times. Like, all they're supposed to do is just keep us in it so that we can have a more competitive game. If we don't win, fine. If we lose 3-2, okay. If we lose 10-0, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's the emphasis, guys.
Well, and let's be clear also, some of these guys are auditioning for their next team.
Absolutely. And for starting roles, again, Blackwood and Vanacek are two guys, I guarantee you that when the Sharks picked up Askarov, both those guys rolled their eyes. And we're like, crap, I thought I might be the next starter and someone else would be coming in as backup, not being replaced. Sharks had a couple of games. We'll go breeze through them real quick this week. Sharks beat the New Jersey Devils by a score of 1-0 with a goal off of Nico Sturman. Boy, you want to talk about Blackwood. Well, he had 44 saves in that one and looked great. Then the Sharks played the Philadelphia Flyers. That was the game that they were losing for quite a bit of the game and then stormed all the way back and then lost in a shootout, which, by the way, Sharks have never really been great at shootouts, so don't suddenly expect. Although they keep trotting out Smith and Celebrini going, right, you guys are going to put these in at some point, right? You guys are going to do that.
Smith should just rear off like halfway to the goalie and just fucking snipe it.
Yeah. Well, and that game, the Flyers had 43 shots. So again, another 40 plus shot game. I will say this though, the difference between the Sharks this half of the month versus last month is, last month they were barely putting up shot totals here. Now they're starting to shoot. So at least those numbers, you're not going to be like 44-44, but they're getting closer. And then the Sharks took on the New York Rangers. They lost that game, but again, they mounted a comeback and looked like they might be able to pull it off. And then last night they played the Penguins, and Blackwood basically said, Crosby, you want 600 goals? Not on my watch. And they lost that game in a shootout again off of a great comeback. So Sharks lost quite a few games this week, but they did it in the way you want. They came back, as we started saying in the beginning of this podcast, and they're starting to look like, that the future is starting to look bright. Guys, your 3 stars of the week. Or we don't have to do the week. We can do since we last potted if you want. 3 stars of October, whatever.
But it's easy either way. I'm gonna do an honorary star to Celebrini's skating speed. It seems to be plot armor. It's always exactly what he needs it to be for whatever the play is. It's weird.
That's such a great way to put it, right? Like, Celebrini is never early, nor is he ever late. He arrives exactly when he needs it to.
I'm always like, Celebrini looks slow. No, he's not. Never mind. Wait, no, he's looking slow. Wait. And then third star goes to Smith because, again, he's putting in the reps. He just seems to be learning every shift. Like he's making the same mistakes more than once, which nobody can be a robot. Well, only a few players can be. So, but it's so good to watch him have fun and build confidence and just take wicked shots. Then it goes to Eklund because
God, he's good.
Okay,
he's good. He's strong on the puck. Like, he's everything we need. He's everything that the true believers think Couture would be if he came back.
I'm gonna.
And then somebody at the top, of course.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go. So I'm, interestingly enough, not going to give a star to Smith or Celebrini. Not because I dislike them. I love Celebrini. So Celebrini would get every star, of the week for me. But
sure.
I'm going to give it to two tandems and then one person. So my third star is going to be both the goaltenders again for really
Right.
being able to keep us in these games and make some really stellar saves. For second, I'm going to put two guys together, and that's going to be Eklund, and I'm going to put Zetterlund there too. I've seen a lot from Zetterlund in really important moments, and he's looked great. And then my number one star at the moment, it's going to be Granlund. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think without Granlund, I think if you were to look at the team right now, if you were to find the linchpin player, you pull that guy and it falls apart fast, I think it's Granlund.
Yeah.
I really do right now. I think it's Granlund.
I
I don't think the Sharks are as competitive.
Yeah.
If you yank
no,
him out.
I agree with you totally. My issue with Granlund is he's often trying to do too much.
Yes.
Sometimes
well,
he succeeds in it. Sometimes he succeeds at it. But he has wingmates. So I wish occasionally he would not try to dangle around everybody and maybe just dish off a pass.
Yeah. But if you pull him out, I think, I
agree.
And especially because he's centering and anchoring lines, like so huge. Ben, you go.
So I'm going to treat this as sort of like a progress report up to this point. And I think that I'm not as sold on Vanacek as I am on Blackwood.
Same.
But I'm going to give Blackwood my third star of the where we are. I'm going to give Eklund my second star of where we are. And just to show how valuable he really is, we saw what happens when this team doesn't have him. Jake Wallman's my number one star.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, of where we are, because he's head and shoulders above any other defenseman we are putting on the ice.
Yep.
Yeah, he's great.
So fucking good. And that's not to shit on Celebrini or Smith, because I think they're doing again like what they need to be doing, and it was always going to be, a learning experience, and they weren't going to pile up points immediately, and that's fine. And in part, that's because also that I don't think they've been given ideal situations to score those points. Plus, Celebrini was out for a long period of time. Smith was boat anchored to come in and good run.
Could you imagine Celebrini with Burns?
Jesus, I think he'd probably slap Burns in the face.
We didn't talk about this, but the thing with Celebrini being out, after that first game, is that put a lot of pressure on Smith, because everyone was looking for him to step up and be Celebrini, and I think that was a little bit unfair. Hey guys, so we got a couple of games this week. The Sharks are playing at home on Monday against the Detroit Red Wings, and then they have back-to-backs away. Wednesday against the Dallas Stars, Thursday against the St. Louis Blues, and then they take on the Buffalo Sabres on Saturday. Now, as far as how these guys are doing in the standings, well, they're tied technically for 30th overall in the league.
Nice.
I mean, games in hand and stuff. I'm not going to do the math for you there, but basically the Blackhawks and the Predators are below them with 13 points. The Sharks, Canadians, Blue Jackets, and Ducks all have 14, and Detroit is up at 26. Now, for a while there, you could really spring up 10 spots, but again, there's some separation with Pittsburgh and St. Louis kind of ended up in the 17 range. In terms of the division, well, the division that we're in, not that great. It's not that great of a division, guys. And they are last in that. They are tied for last with the Anaheim Ducks. Again, the Sharks have 3 games in hand, though, so they're probably worse. That's why they're in that A spot. And the Kraken are sitting up there with 19 points. So, again, focus of the season, not really the wins and losses, but how the losses occur, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
And so far, other than a stretch in the beginning there where it started to look like they might be in the last season position of losing games, by in double digits, they've kind of righted that ship and are keeping things close. So that's where the Sharks are today. You can listen to this podcast. You can subscribe to it on the Apple Podcast app. Android people, work it out. But I think you also know that probably means Spotify. You can check us out on the web at circlingthecup.com. The Facebook, which I cannot remember the login for, I swear I will change the password and get in there in case anyone's asking questions. Of course, Twitter, you can follow Ben on Twitter.
Blue Sky now.
Blue Sky now. At Circling the Cup for both, or what you got there?
I think I'm Ben at Ben CTC on Blue Sky. Let me check.
Okay.
Let me check.
Podcast really became a part of Ben's
Yes.
identity. Who would have thunk
Ben
it?
CTC.
All
Blue
right,
Sky.
and of course we have our Discord channel. If you want it, hit us up on one of the channels. You can also check out stuff on the YouTube as we do things live. Please feel free to write. We love answering questions. It helps fuel the podcast, especially in seasons like this where we're not potting quite as much, because really it's not really a week-to-week type situation, I think, for us at the moment. But we will be back, my friends, and that concludes the podcast. So say goodbye.
Did anybody else find it a little bit rude that Titan Landry tried to kill Carlson, given that he landed us Dickinson?
I mean,
does anyone else find it kind of rude that some higher power has determined that despite the fact that Carlson can be a good player, he will languish on shit teams?
no, I actually think that's fine. I am totally okay with that.
That's how he paid off the Sharks.
Yeah. I guess so. All right, bye-bye. That was fun. I got to run some errands and then hit up the Barracuda game.
It was also
All
a little rude that the Sharks pushed the Pens to overtime, to be honest, since they gave him Dickinson.
Yeah, I mean, make them as tired as they can be for